welcome back to Smashing Apps. This is the second episode we're making for the Apple Festival of Learning, which you'll find on the Apple Education Community website as well. Now, today with this episode of Smashing Apps, we've got a really special focus on coding, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. I'm joined by two fantastic educators, Miriam Walsh and Paul Graham, and they're both going to show you some of the apps that they've got on their devices. And I'm really excited to see what they've got to share. These probably will be apps that you haven't seen before, so it might be you'll pick up some tips for your classroom as well. Without any further ado, Paul, I'll head over to you, and let's see what you're sharing today, please.
How are you doing? So what I'm going to show you is a couple of apps that I've discovered recently. They're really small, simple apps, but they're pretty cool and they have quite a big impact, I think. So hopefully you can just see what's on my iPad at the moment. I'm just going to pop that up onto my device. So these two apps that I'm looking at are, one of them is called Doodle, and it's like Wordle, but in designing sort of little graphs. So as you can see, I've only just found this app, so it's really cool. So if you go into your daily Doodle, it gives you a little task to do. So you can then draw your little computer, and then you've got on the keyboard, there we go. And then you can have all your little items. Make a color, you can undo, all these sort of things that are really quite cool. So if I make mistakes, it's just a really fun little thing to keep you busy while you're playing about. So, and then also it's got all the gallery. You can choose any of your days if you've missed them. So obviously this is only about 30 days old. So draw a frog now. I missed that one. So I'll draw that. But it's that kind of competition where you could share with your friends as well later on. So you can actually airdrop it, etc. to people.
I'd like to see your frog actually, Paul. My frog.
All right, I'm going to really struggle here. Right, let's see. Two big eyes. I don't know. This is not going well. This is not.
Have you actually seen a frog before?
Look,
that's better.
I kind of got mixed up between Kermit and I really like it. But this is a really cool one. I could choose my different colors as well. I should really have chosen green here, shouldn't I? So make sure my color. But it's a really cool little sort of app that you could work with your friends, do a little drawing, compete with each other, but gives you something to do when you've got a little bit of downtime, and it's a new challenge every day. And you can see I probably do need a little bit of practice here, so it's pretty good for me and my drawing skills. But the other one I've found recently is this one here, and it's called Breathe. And this is actually really quite cool app because some of the students we work with have a lot of mental health issues, and this is an app that will help them deal with those sort of anxiety. So it gives you a load of techniques to actually deal with when you get in sort of anxious. It's really simple, but it's like enter 5 things you can see. So it's to distract you from that panic attack. So you write down your 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear. So these are really well-known little techniques. Again, categories, name as many cereals as you can. And I know how much maths calms people down. So there's, as a maths teacher, I love this one, number grid. You highlight your 2 times tables. So it's really simple stuff, just to take you out of that mindset. And I think that's what's so valuable about it, because, when it's really simple stuff, it has a really big impact sometimes,
Yeah.
And then the other one is it obviously gives you helplines and hotlines, your triggers as well. So if you've realized that, like, doing a little session like this with Jacob online YouTube, it's like, well, actually, that's my trigger. So doing YouTube.
I hope not.
But I could add all these, and it will save that for later. So that if I go and talk to somebody else, I can actually find out about, I can say, oh, these are the little things that I've recognized that have been an issue to myself. So those are the 2 apps that are really small, really simple ones, but really cool that I like at the moment.
They're brilliant. I think they're very, like you say, they've got a single task to do and they do it very well. Like the Doodle one, if you've got a few spare minutes, it's always nice to have something to draw, and knowing what to draw is what I would struggle with. I just do a little snail most of the time, and that's all I can manage. And then that mental health one, being able to keep those things in one place and having those techniques easily accessible. I've got to be honest though, I haven't seen those on the App Store myself. Are they new, or do you know kind of much about who's made them?
Yeah, I actually know the 2 developers very well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
hang on. Are you on commission? Is that what
I'm on commission? I'm being paid for this. No, to be honest, there are 2 students we've been working with recently, and we've been doing an app challenge, and we've been looking to develop some apps for the Worldwide Developers Conference, and these are two of the students' apps. So they developed them over maybe the last sort of, a little short period of time, to be honest. We only started in November. They only started in November designing and building apps for the first time. They'd never done anything before like coding wise in Swift or anything like that. And they've built them from November. They started that coding journey, and then they've just built that from there. And they've just sent that into the Worldwide Developers Student Challenge. And yeah, they're really cool, really impressive little pieces of apps just developed off their sort of thinking about what would be an impact to their local community. That was the big thing for that.
Wow, so that's a little bit of a twist, isn't it? That's unexpected. So those apps are actually made by students in your setting.
Yeah, that's right.
They've now been submitted to Apple as part of the Worldwide Developer Conference Student Challenge.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So I mean, we basically spent. It sort of came up with this idea of how do we get kids involved, and how do we get them to enjoy programming? What could be that hook? And one of the things that we've always found when we're working with students is actually developing an app is just a massive thing, because it's like that's something they're using all the time. That's something that they can see that has an impact in their life. So instead of writing code saying "Hello World," why don't we get them to make an app that actually they can interact with? So that's where it came from. It's like, this is how we can get that hook. And it sort of gives that really cool experience. But it took a little bit of time. Just sort of thought, right, let's invite schools. Let's get them in to our space. Because I work quite centrally now, but we had them come in, and we set it up, and it was started off, we have to hook them. We have to make them like find this like super enjoyable. So we arrived, we had donuts, we had Coke, made it like it's like an amazing sort of experience. They come in, so it's not like school, and it's a very different space that we use. And we set it up as if they were at the WWDC event. So we had like a dark screen. It was like a countdown came up, and then we did a launch video, and it was like, this is why you want to do apps. And then it was sort of set out like that. And what was really valuable was we didn't start coding straight away. We got them to think about the apps. We wanted them to hook themselves. So we got them to say, like, what matters to you? What do you want to make a difference? And let's start designing that. So we use like the prototype tools on Keynote and stuff like that. So there's some really cool resources out there that allow you to sort of do that and set up that start journey where it's like, right, what's your design? What do you have to think about? And getting that conversation and just asking that question, well, what do you want to do? What impact do you want to have? And just giving them a tiny, tiny little prompt. And honestly, they were hooked from the start. It was just mind-blowing how engaged they were with it.
That's absolutely incredible. Now, I want to talk a lot more about this, but before we do, I'm aware that Miriam has also been on a similar journey with some of her students. If it's okay with you, Miriam, would you mind just running us through kind of that journey you've been on, and then what your students have created, and what's happened next? Because I hear you've got some exciting news about your students as well.
Thank you, Jacob. So there's 2 apps that we're going to share that were created with students over the past 12 weeks. Just before that, I'm going to just give you a run through of their journey, or the school's journey, the school that I worked with. So before we started, this was our journey. So it was a 12-week journey that I went on with a local school and the teachers in that school. So back in about November-ish last year, we discussed running a code club, and we wanted to see how that would happen. We went off and did our research. I had the coding knowledge, the structure, the app design journal, all of that, but we wanted to see how it would work in the school. A teacher in the school, Sinead, found out about a national organisation, Teen Turn, that would support female coders in their journey. And the school that we happened to be working with was an all-girls school. So that kind of worked without having to do anything else, without having to exclude anyone. And then it was our job to kind of plan the week, because we wanted to target every single kid in the school as well as neighbouring schools if possible. It had to be after school. So it was 2 hours after school on a Thursday. It was also multiple hours during their midterms, weekends, Easter break, lots of like outside school time. And just to call out to the teachers that did allow us to take them out of class from time to time, thank you. There was some of that needed as well. So we started off brainstorming. Freeform, because I was only in the school once a week, was massively beneficial there, because they could collaborate and I could see their graphics or their icons or their ideas without having to physically be there. And then if I needed to drop back feedback or something to them, I was able to do that as well. So every week when we were starting, we weren't playing catch up. We were like all caught up through freeform. Then they prototyped their apps, which gave me an idea of what they wanted to code. So there was a few features there where I didn't really have a clue, I'm going to say, being totally honest, how to do them. So it was my job then to go off and teach myself how to create, say, a chatbot or create certain types of galleries. So then I could go in a week or two later when it was needed and teach the students how to code. And then we spent a good few weeks just coding. iMovie and Clips came in very important for their final submissions because they did have to create some pitch videos pitching their idea, and they had to give an overview of their apps as well. But I'm going to do, hopefully I'll do it justice, an overview of the two apps. So the first one is Bongo Buddies, and this is in Playgrounds. I'm going to just make that window a little bit smaller. So this is in Swift Playgrounds. Everything was created in Playgrounds. So their menus were created in Playgrounds. On the left-hand side, you can see all their different views, all their assets. This did take a lot of weeks. There's a few different things in the assets that I'm just looking right now that weren't used, but we tried along the way. And there was different features. So the big one of the Bongo Buddies, or the why of the Bongo Buddies, is this was a group of 3 students, 4 students, and they wanted a mental health app for teenagers. So they wanted an app that would work for students around their age that was free. So they did their research and they realized there's a lot of apps out there. There was actually one of the other apps being created at the same time in the group. It wasn't created in Swift. So they were like, we're going to create in Swift so that we're different. And this is our standout point. That was my big sell of Swift to 14-year-olds. Honestly, I just wanted them to create in Swift, but they did. Because they wanted to be different. So in theirs, they had a few challenges or things that they wanted. I'm going to go through their diary view. So they wanted a diary that would show what they were thinking every day and log it. So they linked in with their guidance counselor in the school, who was massively beneficial because I'm not an expert in mental health, and that's something that I didn't really want to be taking on as a task. Yes, I can code, but maybe I'm not the best person to come to for advice that professionals should be. So they can put in, say, they're happy today, and type in whatever they want to type in there. So I'm happy, or I'm having a really tough day, or whatever they want to say, and then they can submit it. So that was a big thing of that. They can actually view their previous entries as well. So you can go, okay, I'm happy today. So if we go back, I'm just going to have to go back because that one was one of their ones that didn't have a back button. So they never demoed that in their pitch. So then they had stories. These are pretty magical. These were drawn by one of the students just on her phone. So at the very start, we didn't know how many students were going to be involved. We didn't know what devices we needed. We knew none of that. So we didn't really have a one-to-one device for everyone involved. But a lot of them had like their workarounds where they had certain apps on their phones or certain devices at home. So she did this entire story. And I'll play a couple of seconds of it. This was drawn with her finger on her phone. We have since given her an iPad. And it was narrated again by a teacher in the school because she wanted like an adult voice and she wanted a certain type of voice.
Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a young princess named Adeline.
So not to like downplay the massive amount of work that went into those stories, this is kind of what it was. And it was a story of hope. So she wants both these stories where this is Adeline, a princess who was not allowed to study maths, so went behind the king's back and went out and did maths classes outside the palace. And yeah, it was this mathematician that she called Adeline that basically changed the world. So these are inspiring stories for 13, 14, 15-year-olds or even younger. These are fashion. So again, they drew bongos. So bongos are mascots in various different states and clothes. Eventually their plan would be to have those be unlockable features. So right now they're open to everybody, but if say you check in with your mental health update for 5 days in a row, you get a new outfit, that kind of thing. And this is my favorite one. So this is the feature that terrified me most, because I was like, you are so excited, but I don't know how to do this. I thought it was actually quite easy. And you could see this is all just the content view code, but the code I can show you for the chat view. Basically, we had to set up the chat view, but then they have predetermined answers, which are their bot responses. So if I say certain things over here, it will respond. So if I go into the chat and if I type in hello, it will respond and go, hey there. If I go, how are you? Oops, type. It will respond. Now, you can just imagine how many thousands of responses. So they just gave like a taste for the competition of what responses that you would need in here. But then if anything concerning comes up, they would be asked to contact Childline, which is our national organization that helps. So anything of any concern will go to the professionals, because again, these are kids. We do not store any of these responses. They're all automated. So just from a privacy point of view, none of those are stored within the app. So everything that they did was basically, it has been shown. I can show you just one thing that really helped. I did refer to earlier. Whoops, it's massive. I will actually make the screen big for this one. Freeform was so important for this group and for the other groups, because it was a dumping ground or a drop box for these. So all their drawings, the why of their app, their logo, their brainstorm at the start, which basically was a big gigantic sheet of paper, because you can't go wrong with a big gigantic sheet of paper. Then we took a picture and we kind of made it from there. Our to-do list, that was about a week and then before the end, and then their versions of their app. I've removed a couple of them now just so that we have the final one. But, you know, as we added them, you can drop Swift Playground versions into Freeform, which is really, really useful. So we didn't have to be emailing back and forth. So that one, I'll update you on them later, because they have some exciting news about those. But I'm going to just bring you, while I'm in Freeform, into the second one, which is Canine Pals. These are students the same age in the same group. And as you can see, they're in the same class. So you can see their freeforms looked a little bit similar, but being different as well. So their massive brainstorm at the start is up there, and we kind of brought it into markup, and we have to go, this is really important. This maybe doesn't have to happen. So again, they had certain features. Thankfully, the canine group didn't have anything too complicated. They did want to have a squeaker toy and a clicker toy. So they were their big selling points. And when they presented these to judges loved those two features. So again, that was really useful. And I'm going to go back and show you their one. Oops, and I just quit. So their one, we'll open in a second. So their one is Canine Pals, and this particular group, one of them has an autism assistance dog. One of their teachers trained an autism assistance dog about a year ago or during COVID. So when they were doing this, and we also have autism assistance dogs in some of the other schools that I work with. So there was a link there. And the one thing we all decided, the students highlighted, her peers agreed, and we agreed as teachers as well, is when you get your autism assistance dog, you don't always get all the information with them that you might need. So things like training advice, what to do if you're going for your first car journey, all of that kind of information. So that this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to create an app where you get your dog and you get a little app that goes along, and it'll help you. Obviously, you have things like your helplines and everything as you go if you need them, but just to have everything and to have it something that maybe the child and the family can use as well. So it is very user friendly. These are some awards that they want to focus on. So this is like a coming soon feature. So if the dog has slept every night, you get a little Memoji dog badge. Then useful tips. So they have tips for, these are the ones that they highlighted: the car, bedtime, food tips, summer tips. So what they did, and you can see there's a little feature here that I had to figure out. They have a scrolling view transcript. So they wanted to make this accessible. The Bongo Buddies also, every part of their app was tested in the various different vision modes, so that both apps are fully accessible. So in here, there's a transcript, but also they made their little videos. I'm going to turn off the sound here. But they captioned, so these were made in clips, and they didn't want themselves, so they put the little Memoji puppy head on, and then they made their videos. So it was a way of them being creative. Their sound library, is their next one. So they finally got their training clicker sound and their squeaker toy sound, which I'm not going to play because they're quite frustrating, but they made them so happy to be able to present them. And then they have a quiz at the end where they ask different questions. So for demo purposes, the blue is the right answer in every single one of these. If anybody's ever trying it, but it will change obviously one day. So I got 13 out of 15 correct without even looking at the questions, just because I have tried this so many times. So again, like the Bongo Buddies on, you can see they have all their assets in here, all their different sounds. They have their pictures. Their clicker picture was just, I think, a sound. It's actually white, so it won't show. All their different views. So this took a massive amount of planning from their point of view as well. From me, I was co-mentoring with one of their teachers, so they did have an in-school support like 5 days a week as well. We had 12 apps that we brought to a national competition, and every app group had a mentor. There were 8 teachers involved. So not every teacher that was involved could code, and I want to emphasize this just as part of that journey. Because they couldn't code, it wasn't a challenge. We did the coding, but there were other parts of this, like the business plan, the pitch videos, the technical videos, just the general planning and keeping students calm and relaxed and on track. There were teachers that couldn't code that were essential in this process. So they were the ones that were proofreading their business plans. They were keeping them quiet while we could focus on the kids that needed to know how to code a new feature. So everybody, even every week there was cookies. And I found out a week ago that someone actually went and collected them every week. I thought they were just magically appeared, but they made us happy. So to the person who collected cookies, you were just as important as those that could code. And just to wrap up that part with some success stories, one of the groups, the Bongo Buddies, did place in the national final pitches, and they will now move on to the European pitches, which is actually online. We found out a lot more about that, but if they get onto that, they'll go on to the global finals. And we also have, so they were in the junior division, which was the under 16s, and we have a student who placed the highest score of the day as well in the seniors.
Wow.
So we'll also move on, and I have this here. This is just from the teacher, just to show you that this is how we started. On day 1, on January 19th, she posted this. I had to scroll back to her Twitter. That's what it looked like. And on the right, that's what they looked like a couple of weeks ago, all proud of their app with their t-shirts and the whole lot, presenting, and they were successful. And that moment when we found out, like, we'd never done this before, we just said this is 12 weeks. I honestly didn't think past that date, which was April 29th, I was like, oh, it's all over then. It's not over, yes. And when it's over, we can't wait to do it all again. So that's an insight into how our journey took us and the important parts, which were basically community, having everybody working together, and the apps, and they're...
Miriam, that's absolutely fabulous. And what an amazing journey that those students have been on, with you and with the school. To see them in that first initial classroom setting, and then to see them having just won this amazing prize is absolutely phenomenal. And what a huge load of different skills they must have learned along that journey.
I think we all learned. Yeah, everybody. Nobody had done it before. Nobody knew what to expect. So we all had to, and I know we probably hit it well, but teachers were just as nervous every week going in as students, because we were like, please let this feature work.
It's really inspiring. It's absolutely wonderful, and well done to your students as well for putting together two really powerful and really useful apps as well. I can see a lot of people.
And even though one of them placed, I think they're both winners, because I mean, you got up and you did this and you'd never done it before. Every single person, every student from across the country that presented that day, they all won, because they're young and enthusiastic, and the features are going to be really exciting with their apps.
I think the exciting thing is that's the first app that they've made, and who knows what the second and third and fourth and down the line, what are they going to create that could have such a huge impact on the world? You've started the ball rolling now.
Yeah, I think that's what's next. I know they're already talking about next year, so we are excited. Obviously, we've the next few weeks and see whatever results come out of the European semi-finals and everything, but whatever happens, they've gotten this far and they're excited to do that again. So I think the most important thing is they are excited to do it all over again.
Fantastic. I'm genuinely speechless. Both of your students have made these really, really clever apps, and for a first go at creating something and to have it actually work and be usable on a device, how does that make your students feel when they actually can hold that in their hands and interact with it and share it with their friends?
I think for my students, it's a really powerful tool. It's up their engagement. I think with the whole side of app development, it's made them feel like they can create something and they can develop something that matters for somebody else. And actually, it's really interesting is because the health and wellbeing app for anxiety was designed by one of my students for their sister, because they wanted to make an impact and help their sister deal with some of their anxiety. And it's them feeling like they've made a difference, that they can actually help their sister. And then when you think about it, it's like, well, actually you could help even more people. So it's not just your sister is going to benefit from that, it's much more. And I think for them, that's a real confidence builder, to make them feel like, actually, I can produce something that's valuable to loads of other people out there. And it's just so cool to be able to do that.
And Miriam, that sounds like the same sort of story with your K9 app as well.
Yeah, I think with both of mine, with the K9 one is similar to the student creating one for mental health for their sister. It was a problem that they saw, that they encountered, and they wanted to come up with a solution. And we did find when we went to the app pitches, there were most of the apps were like that. People identifying problems in their community. Ours, we obviously had a mental health app as well, which it's interesting to see the different types. And there were 4 other mental health apps on the same day as mine presented. But they were able to get up and go, this is ours, this is why it's better. It was just the confidence in them was amazing, but just the fact that they could go from this big white sheet of paper with all these ideas, which we did, like Paul did. I spent a lot of time planning those out, because planning takes time, and it's really important to then remind them of their journey. So to get that down right at the start is important. But then from going to that stage, to the very end and seeing their apps on big screen. And I know their school is making still a big deal about them, which is good. So we're all like bigging them up and going, you're wonderful. And they are wonderful. But just that you can achieve this and be interested, because without this, our students wouldn't have made those apps. Paul's students wouldn't have made these apps. So it just takes somebody to get out there and give it a go and figuring out how to try it. And all the resources are out there. I've been asked a lot of times since, how did you do this? It didn't magically happen overnight. I didn't create the apps for them. But yeah, all the resources are out there. It's knowing where to start.
I think you're absolutely on point, Miriam, with like it's people around it, because like it's the other teachers. Like, so I was leading this, but there was the teachers in the schools that were coming to us centrally, because we work as a centrally education team and we have all the schools that we're associated with. And without those teachers thinking, this is a valuable thing for my kids to know about, this is a really opportunity, and spending time with those kids when they're not with us, because we only did input once a month for about 4 months. And I only spent the morning with those guys. So when they went back to those schools, those teachers had to give them some advice on maybe how to do, where you could look up, how could you find that resource. And that's what we did a lot of with those guys, was we knew they were quite engaged. They wanted to learn to code. They loved the idea of design their app, but they'd never done anything like that before. And we needed to give them, because we weren't always there with them, we needed to give them something to support them with. So it was like, well, what tools do we give you? So is it Swift Fundamentals book on the iPad? So that's a fantastic resource to start you off with that journey of Swift. Or with the teacher saying, oh, these websites, like, you know, there's a guy called Paul Hudson who does fantastic resources, like to get you started on how you can solve little programs. And those little things were just enough to give the kids that individual autonomy to do it. So our students were from the ages of 15 to 17 when they started that whole course. So it was really, really sort of opportunity. It's really cool. There's some really cool stuff that Apple produced as well that really started off that whole journey. It's really cool.
So you've mentioned a few really powerful resources there, and we'll link them down below this video and in the Apple education community as well. But I just want to take a step back a minute, because you both mentioned having that initial planning phase of the mind maps and thinking, well, what ideas could I try and solve? What problem do I want to tackle? And so you've got that initial kind of like map of ideas, and then you've got the app that's working. What kind of happens in the middle? Because if I'm watching this, and I'm hoping there are teachers watching this now who feel really excited by the idea that this is actually possible with students. But what do they do after they've got their idea? How do they start actually turning that into a reality?
I hope you don't mind me jumping in here, Miriam. But what was really cool was we got them to break away in little groups, and they all did this individually, but they were working in a little group to bounce off each other first off. So it's that idea forming. And once they separated off that, it was then setting them a task to prototype it. So what do they think is realistic? And one of the absolute best tools to do that is Keynote. So what they were doing was they're building each individual space in a Keynote page that they use the hyperlinks within that to navigate between the two. So it gets the kids, and this is what we do with young students who are maybe not at the stage of coding yet. We get hooked with just doing their app on a Keynote because it feels real. And it gives them that idea of, oh, this is what I need the button to look like. This is what my next page will look like. So it starts to get them to see what it looks like in real life. But then they can go, actually, that maybe doesn't work. So then they can delete that. So suddenly something they've planned out that they think it works really well in their head, when they're starting to put it onto the Keynote page and how it links together, like, oh, that's maybe a bit too difficult. Or, oh, I didn't put that home page button in. I forgot about that. And oh, I want a tab bar along the bottom because that means I can navigate much more easily through my device. So it suddenly becomes, it makes it more real part of the prototype, but it's not that heavy coding sort of side of things. So it gives them that, again, it's all about putting those hooks in. So it's that initial exciting stage of the idea stage, but then you need to give them something else to hook onto, which is their app. They now see it, it's in place, that's them. Now you can make that code. So it's, you don't code until you have that all planned out, because otherwise you're just throwing code into the dark and it becomes really difficult.
So you're using the Keynote and you're using the link only mode, if I'm hearing this correctly. So by using link only, for people that aren't familiar, rather than the keynote deck going slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4, when you press play, you can only interact with it by using the buttons on the screen. So you can jump from slide 1 to slide 7, then back to slide 4. And each of those slides would be a different screen from the app the children are designing. Is that right?
That's exactly it. So you can have you can take the images off Keynote. So we always sort of say, don't use your own images. You keep using the sort of the icons as much as possible to keep it really neat looking.
Yeah.
And when they click on an icon, let's say you have the little home house button on the bottom left, whenever they click on that, it will always take them to page 1. So no matter where they are in the whole app, if they click that little home button, it will take them right back to page 1. So it's a really cool way of giving them an idea of what an app looks like without actually building the app, putting it onto Swift Playgrounds or anything like that.
And so for me as a primary school teacher, I'm thinking that actually that's something that our year 5 and 6s could achieve. They could have that idea for the app and they could make a prototype version without writing a word of code, but they could still then have that to show to someone, say, look, this is what I would like to make. This is the app that I'm imagining in my head. This is it on the device running. And that's a really powerful way of visualizing that as well, isn't it?
We did that when I started this whole programming journey within the Scottish Borders here. We started this off with, like, let's make a coding session, get kids hooked by doing a live kids session in 2020. So it was in October 2020 we did this.
Okay.
And we did a live lesson where we taught kids how to do the link-only app. And we got them building the app. And we did it to about 3,000 P6, P7 students, right?
Wow.
And they were absolutely hooked on it. They thought it was amazing. And the kids came back going, oh, we want to learn more. And everywhere we went to speak to students, they were like, this is brilliant. This is what we want to do. And the schools were like, that's so easy.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's like we can do something as teachers at any stage of that journey. We don't have to be doing all the coding. We can get kids interested by just doing that Keynote prototyping, which is really cool.
And I think you could even say that actually organizing that logical structure, there are so many computing skills involved in that, because it is problem solving, it is logical thinking, it is coding in terms of sequencing what happens and when. And so even if a teacher and a student were to get to that stage, they should be incredibly proud of what they've created. Now, Miriam, going beyond that stage, how do you go from having a working Keynote demo to then actually starting to write the code? What's the bridge between those two steps?
Yeah, so that's the prototype stage was really valuable, and I kind of refused to move past that stage. Now, the prototype doesn't have to look perfect. It can just use, the inbuilt icons. It doesn't have to have all the perfect videos. You can have a placeholder for a video, but it has to be there just to give us a heads up as well. What do these students want to be able to do, and how do we get to that stage so we can show them in a few weeks. So what we did next, so we did the brainstorming, then we did about 2 weeks of the keynote. The groups had their keynote, so we knew the callers. So the next thing we did was we opened up the Playgrounds app on their iPads. So the important thing is you can now do this on your iPads, which wasn't a possibility, I think, when we all started prototyping a few years ago. It was like, okay, you're going to have to do this, and then you're going to have to go on a computer, and you don't have to do that. You can use the same device the whole way through. So the next thing is we laid out the views. So we went through side by side with their prototype and Swift Playgrounds. And we went, okay, this is going to be your home view, or your content view, or your media view, your sound view, whatever we're calling them. And we just spent probably a week doing them, putting in background colors. And then we basically just ticked off the boxes each week. So we went back to their prototype, and I decided, now I was working with 2 groups, or 3 groups, but 2 groups to the final. We said, okay, this week we're going to do just your videos, and both groups would then accomplish their videos by the end of that week. So they would have their videos inputted into whichever views that they were going into. So it slowed down a little bit, but if you remember, this only took us 12 weeks. So there is still a little bit of pressure, but having that prototype there, they feel like they've achieved it. They just need to code it. So there were people in the groups that were stronger coders, and they kind of took a lead here, and others went off and did, maybe they worked on the business plan. Our groups one of my groups had 3, one had 4 in, and every single member of that group were just as important, no matter what their role was. So it wouldn't have gotten to the stage where it did without all of them. But yeah, it's to take small steps, but to achieve one thing each time you see them. So I would decide, what are these 2 groups going to achieve today? And I know one week it was putting the videos, which they'd filmed independently throughout the previous week. So we had to learn how to embed a video in an app. And then the next one, there was a week where none of our navigation was working. So we had to take a step back and say, why are these buttons not working? Got those working. And again, it was a problem every week. But we found the solution by the end as well. And right up until the very end, we were coding. So we had to submit our apps to, we didn't enter WWDC, it was Technovation, but we had to submit the apps by the 19th of April, but you had until the 29th to get the code right. So it just had to look like it worked on the 19th, and for Bongo Buddies it did. But for the K9, the things like the clicker sounds that they were like done about 3 days beforehand. So yeah, you did have that little bit of room where you could tidy things up. But the prototype, like Paul said, that was the most valuable thing. Without a good solid prototype, you're kind of in the dark. You don't know what to do next. And yeah.
And then breaking that down, like you said, you mentioned breaking each page of the keynote into a different view in Swift Playground. So you had that, you kind of transferred the structure from one to the other. And then you kind of went back and you broke it into small problems and you kind of bit off a chunk each week almost.
Yeah, so there were things like we knew, the home button's not working, or you actually saw when I think it was the diary view, there was no back button, which I forgot all about. But yeah, there was no back. We didn't actually download that in the pitch, but yeah, you would by the end in the freeform we had, okay, what problems do we have to fix? So in the last days, now the deadline fell into Easter break, so there was very little. It was kind of all finished like the week or so before then. It was, what do we really need to do to get this to the end? So it's all the little things like what do we really need versus what do we really want as well. So the clicker sounds, they weren't essential. The videos were essential for that app because they were big selling points. So we put what really, like an app comes out in beta and then it comes out into version 1 and then there's an update maybe a couple of weeks later and you've got new features. So we treated it the same thing, like every week it was a new feature and what was going to take priority for those apps.
That sounds like a really good way of approaching it, and it makes it more manageable for those students rather than being overwhelming and everything at once.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, both of you, what drew you to, you both mentioned Swift Playgrounds as being the way you've coded it, which uses Swift language. What drew you both to Swift as opposed to perhaps other languages?
First things first, the reason why we went with Swift Playgrounds is because we have one-to-one iPads in all our schools. So from the age of 8 to 18, they have an iPad in their hands. So we wanted to create something that no matter what background they had, it was an equitable access. So we wanted to be able to give them something that was on their device ready right now that they could do the coding they needed to do. And Swift is so good at making really good looking apps. And that's what's, because obviously it's the app development, it's iPads, Apple's code. So they're going to make fantastic looking apps. And there's some really, really good starter points. So what's amazing, I don't know, do you mind if I show you some of the...
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So one of the really cool sort of spaces within the Swift is the playground. So if you're in your standard playgrounds here, at the very bottom, you can see more playgrounds. If you go in here, it gives you a really good starter for 10 for all our students. So for example, I had a student who wanted to do a date planner. They wanted to set goals for each day. So, well, look, we've got date planner right here, right in the middle here. So you got date planner, that's how they started it. Or you had another student who had a series of images that they wanted to put together in a gallery of things that they'd taken. So again, you start with image gallery. So you have that amazing place to start, or laying out your views tells the students how to navigate. And that's why it's so good, because as a programmer myself, it's maybe a little bit easier for me to start. But the guys who came with the students, the 2 schools that we had the biggest engagement from, don't have computing teachers.
Okay.
And they don't have a computing department. And So this is their first experience of it. And the teachers don't have that coding experience. So this gives them a tool to sort of structure what they want to create. So it's like, oh, let's create an image gallery for storing our pictures, or let's create a sizeometer. So it means that at home, I'm not stuck, I'm lost. I have something on my iPad in the programming space that I'm learning from that gives me that starter point, start for 10, and then I can maybe play with it. And it gives you that sort of, these lessons are all there. So I would say that as a project, I would say, all right, guys, before next session, I suggest you look at this, because we're going to look at navigation, and then they would go have a look at it. Or let's look at layouts and have a look at here about how we lay things out. And I'm going to use a little technical term, something called VStack, which means vertically, laying out things vertically. So it means it looks really good, and the kids get that straight away, that easy win. And that was always our approach, was how do we get a quick win? How do we get the kids moving forward? How do we keep them hooked? Because the second you get stuck on something, that's when you start to lose that resilience. And that's our job, is to keep that motivation. And that's what Swift does better than trying to figure out all these other apps everywhere else, go online, do all that stuff. Kids at home, on the bus, wherever it is, they can do coding because they don't need to be connected to the internet. That is another really cool thing about that, is that they can be disconnected, and it doesn't matter. That was the big win for us.
And even when you're showing it there, and you're looking at all those resources that are built in, the different demos and the different books that talk you through it, it's all so friendly and so appealing. It's not like, like hacker in the dark with all the green on the screen. It's really friendly and inviting. And for children, that's such a big win, isn't it? Because it makes it feel that much more accessible. And actually what they're doing is complicated stuff, but by having it accessible and easy to access, it breaks down such a big barrier for them.
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's that accessibility and that relevance. So kids they're always thinking about, like, I want pictures, or I want multimedia on this. I want sound. So that shows you how to do it. Now that's how some of our kids really up their app a little bit more. It's like adding sound. I didn't teach them that. I didn't go into that at all. That's them going into Swift Playgrounds.
Amazing.
And finding it out. That's what's really cool, is you show them that Swift, and all the tools are there for their own learning. You just have to provide that hook, and you just have to provide that spark of inspiration, and they'll go for it. That's what's so cool about it.
That's so lovely to hear. And Miriam, I'm guessing the Swift was the draw for you for similar reasons?
Yeah, so for me, because they do have the iPads, obviously Swift is the accessible way. With our After School Code Club, it wasn't the only language that was used. There were other teachers with other experience, but we quickly found that this was getting us better looking results. So I know the school has already said, when we do it all over again, it's just going to be Swift. There's going to be no other ones. And even going to the national pitches, we found there was other languages used or other platforms used, and the same problems existed from students from all these different counties. We're all having the same issue. And when the judges were asking them, oh, what was your problem? The student in like Mayo was having the same problem as the student in Dublin or wherever, because of the platform that they'd chosen, which wasn't Swift. So we have, it's the same. It's accessible, it's friendly. It doesn't feel like this serious black and white like just document. There's loads, obviously there's the books, there's everything inbuilt in the playground if the students don't want to read books. There's obviously YouTube resources, the WWDC developer resources. A lot of those are kid friendly as well if you go through them. So if they want to do stuff, there are lots of walkthroughs. So I think it's just the friendliness of it, and the stacks. I know Paul mentioned Z stacks, V stacks, all of those. It just means that you group everything, and it's easy to move, it's easy to copy, it's easy to edit, and they can just when, like, even for the chatbot feature in the Bongo Buddies app, they could see, okay, this is where we put more questions in. I didn't have to explain that. They just knew. Once we got it working, they were able to go off and take the very basic and make something magical out of it. So definitely the accessibility and the fact that you can just do it on your iPad is everything, because a lot of people might not have a computer or whatever, but you have your iPad at school, and a lot of them have them at home as well. So
Can I just hearing you, Miriam, I've just got this thing in my head that was saying, what was that big hook again? And I was like, that what you see is what you get. Now, that is such a game changer with Swift, when they're coding on Swift UI, which is the app building source, it shows you exactly what you've written in real terms right there, right now. So I write print hello world, and it will, well, I won't say it with text hello world, and you will see it appear on the app straight away. Or let's put that image on my page. Oh, that's a bit too high up. How do I move it? And you can do that real time. And it's not like this coding, like the coding in the dark, as you said, you're in a dark room, typing text, you run it and you go, oh, it's wrong. No, I don't have to worry about that. I can see it all the time.
Yeah.
There was no wondering if things worked or not. Like you knew. You didn't have to wait until the end stage to connect to your phone and to emulate it or whatever. Like you just knew. And if something, was off the screen, like we did have, there was some stuff towards the end was done a mix of Mac and an iPad, but we actually found just doing it on the one device it is better. You just, what you see is what you get. What you just said is totally true, because if something didn't work, we can't magically make it work. We have to go out and find the reason why it doesn't work. And it does produce the errors as well. That Playground does produce are really useful. Things like extra brackets, I think, was our most made mistake. Not enough brackets or extra brackets, but it tells you in a way that everybody can understand.
And it gives you that fix sometimes as well. You just have to click fix and it does it. So it's like it's a little cool sort of stuff that you can do away. But it's very cool. Sort of the opportunities that you get through that. I mean, we find that we're lucky enough in where we hosted it to have iMacs, and the kids have their iPads. The kids don't want to touch the iMacs. They honestly, they could have had the opportunity to work with both, and right now we're happy with the iPad.
Happy with the iPad.
That was their native space, and that's where they became comfortable. And my next goal is to see if we can get these published to the App Store. So it's like there might be a little changes we have to do, but to be honest, that's amazing. It's like you can give a kid an opportunity to build their app, design it, build it, and then if it's up to the post it to the App Store. That is such a cool opportunity to be able to do that whole process. But for me, fundamentally throughout that, it's that making them feel special, making them feel like they're doing something important and valuable. And I think that's what Miriam's team's done is really well as well. It's like, make them think they're making a difference. What is it matters to them? That's that big hook. And I think fundamentally without that, the whole journey becomes a little bit more difficult, because if you don't have that, what matters to you, and you're saying, I need you to make me this app, there's not that creativity, there's not that inspiration that the kids can get from that experience. And that's what's so addictive about programming, is that you can be creative and it's your world that sort of you create that, and you make a difference by what you think works and what your imagination kind of takes you wherever you want it to go.
And that's such a valuable thing that they can have that idea, that imagination can kick in. They can find that problem that they want to solve, and then they can go right the way through to actually publishing it and sharing it on the App Store, so that the whole world can access what they've created. It becomes real, and it's that journey that a professional developer would go through as well, isn't it? It's that whole process they would go through. I'm aware that we're running out of time, but I wanted just to ask you both two last questions, if that's okay. So the first question for both of you is, have either you or your students had any reflections on this process that perhaps would change how you approach it next time, or perhaps would suggest some next steps for you?
I think for us, and it's coming more from a teacher point of view, because I'm not going to say we're in charge, but we the one thing we realized is the time frame was quite short. Now, we decided really early on, just a few weeks into this 12 weeks, that we need more time. So we want to start it in September, October instead next year. So it's just to give them the whole year. And that's okay with students. They also said that we just want to pace it a little bit more, so that there's a little bit less pressure on at the end, but so that there's more people involved. We also want to open it up even more. So we are going to look at slightly younger, linking with primary schools as well. So they will be like 10 to 12-year-olds, and they might just get to the prototyping stage, and it might be ours take them further. So those are two things that we've been discussing. And then the other one is just what I said already, we're just going to do Swift and the iPads next year. So the whole app design cycle, the freeform, iMovie, keynotes, and playgrounds, that's going to be our workflow for next year, just so that they can all be the same. And yeah, it's not a big change, but I think the biggest thing was just more time, just so that we pace it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really valuable thing to learn and improve on for next year. Paul, what about yourself?
The big thing we want to change next year is kind of similar to what Miriam's saying, is that instead of starting November time, we'll start in August and spend a bit more time on the design and the prototyping, because I think that gives a big hook for even our less skilled ones. They can really get nitty gritty of that, and we can give them that support. The other one is to involve more people from outside. So we've asked people from other, like say developers, and seeing if there's companies around here who want to get more involved, because it's a way of giving those kids an access to the real world. So it's now developing sort of a young workforce. It's making it sort of a bigger thing. So that's something we want to do. And the other one is the reflections is I suppose the other thing we're changing is we're trying to extend it so it involves some of the local authorities like Edinburgh City Council and Glasgow are sort of interested in doing that. So we're trying to make it bigger and bigger. But in reflections, absolute key is making the whole experience special, making the kids feel special, making them feel like it's a valuable place, that this is a really cool career to go into. This is a really cool space to learn about, because look what you can do with it. Look at the space you can work in. So we thought really, really carefully about where we were doing it and how we used the space. So it's made it really nice looking, made it look like a quite new technical space. But then also things like bringing food, like treats, not treating them like kids, treat it like it's a workspace. That was such a valuable thing, because the kid said to me, I wish school was like this every day. Like that was something that was really quite impactful for me. It was the kid asks you that or says that, you know that they're learning a lot because they're just so focused on coding. I've never seen that level of engagement, and it's because they're doing something that they want to do. That's huge. Let them do what they want to do, make them feel special, and make the environment feel nice, just great to be in. And really think about how you set that scene. If you get that hook right, it's a big win. It's a huge win.
Fantastic. And so my very last question to wrap it all up. People who are watching this right now, perhaps no experience doing this, perhaps they've tried it once and didn't get very far. What's your top tip for those teachers to get this up and running in their setting?
I think just try it. Like we said, we'll do this once for 12 weeks. We'll treat it as a pilot. And we knew really, really early on that it was going to be more than a pilot, that it was something there's definitely things we would have done differently, but we know that for next time. Like we just said, things like more time. Food is always important. You cannot go hungry. We had plenty of food. But that's it. It's like if you want to try it, look at the resources. I do have a breakdown of all our playgrounds on the community and how we did each feature. So do check those out on the Apple Education community as well. And there's always people to help. I had educators all over that know all about these apps, because I was asking them questions. I was asking them for feedback. I was asking them for encouraging voice memos for the students in week 3 and 4. It's like, can you just send them a message from like South Africa or wherever you are, saying that these kids are amazing, just to encourage them. And everybody, it was more than our tiny little Code Club community. It was national and global. So
yeah,
do
fantastic.
try us and you'll be supported.
I think I'm going to say a couple of things the same as Miriam. And the first thing is like around just start with prototyping. Just give that a go, get something created, and let's see where it goes from there. And when you get to the coding stage, you got Swift Playgrounds as that sort of help points. Just you guide that. You start with that. But ask the community, ask other coders, ask people out with, because honestly, you will not believe what you can get from people when you ask that question. And I know there's so many people who are really, really, really supportive of this. And it's like, yeah, I've asked for some ridiculous stuff, and every time it's been positively supported. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And it's really cool. Like one of our local companies has offered a prize, you know what I mean? And it's a really, really cool prize for the kids to get. And it's just by asking that question. And it's like, well, there's always people helping, because we are so short on people who have these skills for our communities and our economy or wherever it is, that we are doing our kids a disservice if we don't give them the opportunity to learn this and learn how to code. So when you ask people, they are so enthusiastic to get involved, because they know how important it is for our young people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's been such an inspiring hour talking to you both. I want to go and jump into Playgrounds now and spend some time making panda memes and designing all these sort of things with the built-in lessons. And I'm really excited to get going, and I hope people watching this feel the same as well. So it wouldn't be a YouTube video without wrapping up at the end. So please do make sure you subscribe down below, because there are more Smashing Apps episodes on this channel, more to come as well. And if you'd like to see more of my face, I don't know if that's if you do or not, but tomorrow evening there's another Smashing Apps all about accessibility, where we've got 8 or 9 people sharing their single top tip to make iPad accessible to all learners and all educators. And yesterday we did a Smashing Apps all about creativity on the iPad. So if you're not watching it live, they'll be linked up here somewhere. If you are watching it live, come back again tomorrow. And a massive thanks again to Miriam and Paul. You can find more information about them on their Twitter handles down below, and of course on the Apple education community as well. And that's it for Smashing Apps this week. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for taking part, both of you, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.